Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about the latest and greatest game from Rockstar Games called Red Dead Redemption 2. From the company that brought you the record-breaking Grand Theft Auto 5 franchise, Red Dead has similar action, but it's also very different. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a Western-themed action-adventure video game. So while you get the usual crime and gunplay elements which Rockstar are known for, but with Red Dead 2, you also get horse riding, hunting, bank robberies, and gang fights and more. It's set in 1899 and follows the story of a Western outlaw named Arthur Morgan, but I'm really not here to tell the whole story of the game or anything, and this isn't actually a full-on review. I did get the game last night, but I've only been able to barely scratch the surface in the gameplay. This is going to be a great, big, long-winded story, I'm sure. And if I like the sequel as much as I like the originals, then I know this game is definitely going to be worth it. And I'm also glad to see Red Dead getting more coverage and praise in the media now than ever. But with that success and popularity, there also comes some downsides. Namely, one of the ones we're talking about today, the outraged and hair-trigger responses from liberals and SJWs about it. Every time there's a big franchise everybody likes, they find a way to complain, and well, this time is no different. This time it's the game's representation of women that's come under fire. Red Dead is set over 100 years ago after all, and in an effort to be historically accurate, Rockstar may have also opened themselves up for attacks from feminists who are getting triggered. The first example of this comes from a review of the game from the website Verge.com. It's called Red Dead Redemption 2 is the most convincing open world game ever, and while the review is clearly largely praising the game, as it should, I did find a certain section of the review that was rather interesting. Check this part out. The game is less successful when it comes to its treatment of women. While there are plenty of female characters in the group, aside from one woman who only becomes an actual gunslinging badass more than halfway through the game, they're mostly relegated to side roles like mothers, lovers, and caregivers. Even when the game seems like it might have something interesting to say about women's rights, particularly in such an oppressive time, it stumbles over itself. One mission has Arthur protecting a group of protesters fighting for the right for women to vote, but their passion and bravery don't seem to have earned much respect from Arthur. I ain't voted before, he says, when it's all done, but I'm getting kinda hot for voting rights. And well, wow. First of all, who says that mothers, lovers, and caregivers are side roles? The author says they are relegated to these roles like it's some kind of punishment. Sounds like he looks down on them too. And I have to say, that says more about this writer than us, or the video game and its creators. In my opinion, mothers and caregivers are important and vital parts of society. Sure, their jobs might not be as glamorous or exciting as the men in their group, especially in this game, and that's why the game is based on the guys anyway. They're the ones gunslinging and risking their lives and going on adventures. Men are the ones who are expendable in this series too. That's why the women stay at camp more and they're protected, as it was in the West in the original times. Now with that in mind, women are actually sometimes treated better and above men when you think about it. They're the ones who are protected and stay at home while the men go out and risk their lives. They're expected to. But with that said, I also won't deny there was a lot of sexism and more strict gender roles 100 years ago either. But the real thing about everything here is this is a goddamn video game, and complaining about male representation for women is quite ridiculous. It's not accurate in its own context for the story and the time period, and it's not worth complaining about in a video game for that matter either. Really, what's going on here is this reviewer wanted female main characters. Make no mistake, forcing them into everything is the SJW trend lately. Everything's getting feminized, and the writer even mentions a girl who becomes a gunslinger in this story in Red Dead. But even then, even when the thing they want happens, they still complain because it's not long enough. It's really never enough for these kinds of people. I mean, even the last part of this section displays this again. The author was hoping for more political commentary about women's rights or something, which is already sounding lame to me, but then, boom, they go over a bit that's all about women's right to vote. Exactly what they wanted, but even with that in the game and having your character defend the pro-women's rights side from attacks, that's still not enough. I guess they want the main character to be more into it or something, but it really just sounds like nitpicky, biased SJW bullshit, and it sounds like they just wanted the main character to be female. Next, we have more info on this criticism of Red Dead 2 from an article on comicbook.com. It's called Red Dead Redemption 2 Developer Talks About Criticism Over Not Empowering Women in Its Games. This should be good. Let's take a look. Warranted or not, over the years, Rockstar Games has received criticism over how it depicts women in its games, and how its games never serve to empower them. I don't know why people think games need to empower women. It's stupid, but moving on. Individuals who hold this criticism often point to the lack of female protagonists in Rockstar's games, and the prostitution system in Grand Theft Auto. Meanwhile, combating this claim, many have pointed to the numerous well-realized and strong women characters the developer has created over the years, such as Bonnie McFarlane from Red Dead Redemption. However, despite criticisms from certain circles and parts of the internet, it doesn't appear Rockstar Games is changing its approach with Red Dead Redemption 2. Speaking of Vulture, co-founder of the company, Dan Houser spoke about female characters in the upcoming Red Dead Redemption 2, as well as addressed the criticism it has received from some about the depiction of women in its games. According to Houser, the perceived lack of women empowerment in its games won't be a problem in the open world Western, which will have a diverse cast of female female characters, some strong, others weak. In other words, women will be treated just like men and everybody else in the game. That's probably not what they want. Sounds like these leftists want women to have special treatment, like always. And yes, I remember these classic complaints about Grand Theft Auto having prostitutes from back in the day. And this is another left-wing PC police reaction to a game they don't even understand, or care about, or even play for that matter. Like I said about Red Dead 2 getting this hate now, the same thing happened to Grand Theft Auto before it. When Rockstar makes big, huge, groundbreaking games like this, they get really popular. And SJWs always come a knocking quickly after, literally knocking sometimes. They do love bashing popular things in our country's pop culture in order to appear relevant, kind of like what Anita Sarkeesian tried to do. But the thing is, SJWs aren't relevant. They're a small, insignificant part of our population that don't know nothing. They're also ignorant though, as it's apparent from these articles we're going over, and seeing them comment on things they don't know or understand, like Rockstar's video games. This is also the same kind of conversation we had about Battlefield 5, except in the inverse. That game was including lots of female characters. They were shoving them down the fans' throats, and that's why no one ended up buying the game. And now Rockstar is being smart and not doing that, and not caving into SJWs. They're making the same games they've always wanted to make, and they're making them badass and somewhat historically accurate too, which is cool. And that's why SJWs are complaining again as well. Like little children who stopped getting their way, the leftists are like spoiled brats who have been pampered their whole lives and can't handle even the slightest thing not going their way. So make no mistake, the SJWs would destroy this game with all the female characters and SJW stories they could, but fortunately they didn't, and the game will do well and sell outstandingly because of it. There is this old intellectual called Lillian Powell who's come back to the South from New York, who's almost like a Dorothy Parker character, said Hauser. There are also ones who are weak and ones who are weak and become strong, and ones who think they're strong but they're not. And that goes for men too. As you would expect, the era and setting will play a large role in the representation of genders and races in the game. It was a pivotal time in the suffrage movement of women, and the game will reflect this honestly and accurately. It was a time when women are beginning to question their roles, and the Wild West was an era where people could invent themselves for the first time. Many of the people who were inventing themselves were women, said Hauser. They were no longer constrained by society because there was no society. But from the sounds of it, Red Dead Redemption 2 will feature a diverse and era-capturing cast of characters, as well as feature some strong female leads that will surely make some of its critics happy. Sounds like this comic book writer isn't as batshit crazy as the last one at The Verge. This second piece is better too because it's giving the game's creators a chance to respond and lay out a proper defense for Red Dead 2. And from the sounds of the ending here, it really sounds like the game is already going out of its way to represent for women as much as possible. Bringing in a women's right to vote storyline is a nice touch, and I do think the Wild West setting is a good one to show a place where women were first starting to step out and do something different from the previous generation's submissive gender norms. Well done, Rockstar. Really reminds me of that TV show Westworld now that I think about it. They have a Western setting too, in a way, and many strong female leads as well.
Do you know where you are, Stephen?
I'm gonna guess an abandoned Apple store.
No. You're in a Westworld diagnostic facility. You're a host, and you're glitching. I'm gonna ask you a few questions. Diagnostic mode. Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
Every day since November 8th.
I think the main problem with Red Dead 2 is, according to the SJWs, it's never enough. They would want all the main characters female and all of the story to revolve around them if they had their way. And if the game was historically accurate and made about women of the time, it would be the most boring shit ever. It would mostly consist of cooking, cleaning, giving birth, and raising children in the 1890s. And you gotta admit, that's kind of a boring setup, but hey, the left-wingers were never the best at making these kind of things anyway. They don't know about games, movies, or TV shows. Everything they make is crap. And these SJW losers don't even play video games in the first place. And that's why the smarter companies, they don't even care to pander to them anymore. In the end, this just goes to show that SJWs will get triggered by anything. If it's not enough female leads in popular works, they'll want more gays, trans, or minority characters. And I predict Red Dead 2 will get some flack eventually in the future because, much like Grand Theft Auto before it, the game will inevitably feature some non-PC things like prostitutes and probably some sexist male characters. And even if they are villains and made out to be the bad guys, leftists just can't take it. And like today and in the future, we'll never stop hearing them complain about it. What do you guys think? Should the women's representation in Red Dead 2 trigger SJWs? Was the female representation accurate in the game? And did you guys get a copy? Are you going to play? And why do you think leftists always feel so entitled they think they can take over and change everything that's popular? Comment your thoughts on everything below. And don't forget to check out our new updated links in the description. There you can find links where you can follow me on Twitter, support the show, and even a list of playlists that will collect a lot of my older popular videos. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks again for watching today's video. We'll see y'all next time.
Now, listen closely to my words. These violent delights have violent ends. Does that mean anything to you?
No. Does it mean anything to you?
Not really. I think the writers throw that stuff in to sound smart. Now, Stephen,